talking to you about it gave me the confidence in the idea that it was actually the next James Blake album, and that it's actually this is my sound. This is, in my opinion, like my most natural state. Like there's no skill. I didn't need to acquire any skills to make it. It just happened from what I was in that moment.
That was a good day in the office though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was a good day.
It was a good day.
That was one of those moments where you can sit back and confidently say to yourself quietly, if not out loud, but probably only with you in the room, fuck yeah.
But yeah, that's what I said.
Smash that.
Fuck yeah, I smashed that.
It's facts.
It's facts. They were my very words.
It's facts.
And then I said facts afterwards.
Start to finish, facts.
Yeah.
The whole thing is a stunner. I've lost count how many times I've been lucky enough to be able to hang out on the record and at times off the record and talk about music and life with you. I treasure every one of them.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to dive into this and to playing robots into heaven. I mean, you work with people. You're a generous collaborator, but this is you and very few other people trying to find purpose and trying to find something new to say. And so the question I've never asked you is, where does it start this time? How do you know it started? How do you know it's the beginning of something new and not just tutoing about in the studio, fucking around with sounds, having fun?
Yeah, well, actually, fucking around with sounds and having fun was the start of this. And it started alongside probably Friends That Break Your Heart. Around that time, I was also making kind of... I got into like modular synths. And,
yeah, you did.
I did. Yeah, I did.
And it's obsessive, right? I know people who've...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's an amazing outlet for addiction or ADHD.
It's a midlife crisis 10 years too soon for you, mate.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, we have longer lifespans now. It could be a third life crisis. And I just had this... this increasingly large folder of modular jams that I'd been making, and I had like 120 modular jams, and they were all like an hour long, and I was just going through them.
And are you fucking baked off your head when you do it? Because in my head, the best way to do this is to just do a bowl and just work on modular synths for like 8 hours, just consistently just topping up, just smoking mad weed.
That is the classic combo, but
Good.
I find that when I smoke weed,
good to see something good came out of the 90s, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. I can't make music on when I'm smoking weed. The last thing I made when I smoked was Klavierwerke, and the sound of the synth sounds like a heartbeat. And I remember as I was making
That's your anxiety attack in real time.
Literally, as I was making it, it sounded like my heart was arrhythmic, and like I was having some kind of like heart problem, and I started freaking myself out and worrying that I was going to die.
Got a good tune out of it.
Tune's good though, yeah. And so I never really did it again because my heart,
You need it.
Yeah, I need the heart. Anyway, so I did all these modular jams anyway, and I was just doing it for fun, and eventually I started turning them into pieces of music that were listenable, because a lot of that stuff, it can be a bit some of it's atonal, some of it's not necessarily in song format. It's it's just like long periods of synth exploration, should we say? But to the layman, it just sounds like deep, just stuff that's not. I mean,
does it sound like this? Did this come out of a modular jam?
It did.
So this was one of those things that you found, settled into, and it organically just followed with no destination at the time. Fuck me.
So with this, I was listening to this over and over and over and over, and then I came up with this melody, and it had no lyrics initially. We did it on tour.
And at what point did your body chemistry shift and you realized that you'd found something that you were deeply in love with?
Well, this tune first started as a breakbeat, like the beat was like breakbeat really, and that's when I sort of fell in love with it. Bass line, all that stuff, and then it was just a matter of getting the beat right. And
no, it's about getting the fucking lyrics and that, because you could fuck that up.
Right,
You've got this.
Sure.
This could have been instrumental and moved people, but you added such an incredible moment to it that just gave it that center. That's also a good fucking day at the office, isn't it?
It was, yeah.
A lot of good days at the office on this album.
Every time I come here, I ask if I can have one of those buttons.
No.
I need one for my house.
Sure. What you do in your house is your business, but you can't touch mine.
Yeah, right, okay.
All right?
I hear you.
I don't go into your house and start fucking around with your modular synths. Do you know what I mean?
You're right. And I was out of order for asking.
It's really challenging, I think, for people to understand how tough it is to take something that feels ready instrumentally and find a place that's necessary for a vocal.
Right.
That needs it rather than you want to put on. That needed that. If you'd wanted to put it on, it probably wouldn't have fit.
Yeah, and it had to sort of be simple, and the melody had to be simple and kind of repetitive. And, it's funny, there's an intersection between pop and dance music that just is kind of, it's like they arrive at the same idea without even meaning to, but it's just it's the repetition thing. It's like
Underworld do that beautifully.
Yeah.
Beautifully.
Exactly, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And there's obviously tiny echoes of Underworld, or not even Underworld, but like just
the tempo.
That style and tempo.
Fast.
Yeah.
It's fast. Like,
yeah.
That's the thing. A lot of people, when they're trying to create emotion in dance music, understandably and rightfully fall in between 120 and about 128. That's what, 135?
Yeah, it's fast, yeah. And I guess it's all just like analog drum machines and distortion and it's just vibe and not so much thinking, which I think someone like me, I think I can overthink, and so a lot of the music on this record is happened quite quickly, and it's not really that overwrought,
Is that why we're listening to what is effectively the closest thing to a club record that you've made in a while?
Definitely. I mean, I don't think I've ever made a club record apart from the CMYK.
Yeah, the beginning.
And, stuff that was designed for that completely. But this sort of isn't really designed for the club particularly. I mean, it's sort of just designed to sound good loud. And I think it's like, I think some of my favorite electronic music has come around from people who are really plugged into a certain scene, but then also some of it's come from people who are completely detached from scenes altogether. And I think, living in LA for 8 years, it's kind of like not been, I've not been plugged into a London clubbing thing for a long time, apart from when I pop up there and stuff. And obviously I still have friends who play there, but
I don't think it has any bearing on how you are respected or received within the scene. But I acknowledge your point about, for one reason or another, separating yourself from it geographically.
Yeah.
There's lots of reasons to move to LA.
Totally. Yeah.
But was to some degree, do you think, even looking back on it now, that there's a subconscious part of this whole experience that has been by design, that in a way you are happier when you're not playing nice in the sandpit with everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I was always like that, really. I mean, I sort of had, I don't know, I would be kind of shopping my beats to DJs at like, various like club nights and stuff, and I'd hope that they would play them, and when they did, it was always a great feeling, but the music always just sounded so different from the rest of the set. It was a blessing and a curse, really, because obviously it just doesn't fit. And that's good when you want to do something, when they want to do something different. Very often they would end on it. Okay,
all DJs and anyone deep in club culture knows that you either end on a song because it's like peak of the night, I'm sending you home with a big smile on your face, or you're doing someone a solid.
Yeah, you end the tune because it's your mate. You end the night with a tune because it's your mate. And so I think maybe they just, it was like a pity party.
God bless it though. God bless that pity party.
Absolutely.
Imagine if everyone had decided that it's like an episode of Black Mirror. There's a parallel universe where James Blake's songs are like the Swedish House Mafia or something, like the biggest tunes of every single night, and you're miserable. You're sitting behind the DJ booth on your 13th bottle of high level tequila.
Yeah.
Everyone's just like taking selfies with you.
Yeah.
your hair's different.
Yeah.
You're wearing different clothes. Leather trousers.
Yeah.
You're wearing leather trousers, probably. Obviously, you got your shirt at least 3 buttons lower than it is right now. It's kind of low right now. And, and it's like... there is another universe where James Blake is the peak era, the peak of the night.
Yeah, it's a... in the multiverse, I'm sure there's one...
Influences. Oh my God, this event is so rad. This event is so rad. Who's playing? Who cares? I just love the event.
That's it. That's all I want anyone to say, by the way.
It's happening in another universe.
But I want it in this universe.
I know.
I hope.
Marvel have been trying to fix that for 60 years.
Yes. I just want it in some permutation of this world that... but maybe, hopefully in this one, that somebody's just raving and they don't give a shit.
In this universe,
you
are incredibly successful amongst 49-year-old influencers. We love you.
Great.
And this event is rad.
Oh yeah, it is. It is.
Look, I mean, it's funny because we've joked about this before off the record about the idea of other people's version of success, who James Blake is to everybody versus what it is you're actually trying to achieve. And I wonder, there must be times when those two things marry beautifully and it's in harmony, and you're like, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to make, and where it sits right now in the conversation and within the audience, and where I am is beautiful.
Yeah.
But there must be times, because it happens to every artist, where you feel a bit misunderstood.
Yeah, well, that was kind of the purpose of releasing Big Hammer first. It's one of the only songs on the record that doesn't have me singing on it. But it's also a kind of nod to an energy that, I can't, I'm not the Ragged Twins, do you know what I mean? So I can't, there's something I can't do myself, but I can, the energy of that track it was undeniable, and I needed to put it on it. And it's funny because there are going to be, I know there are going to be people who just not really into it, but and in fact there was one review, a reviewer who normally loves my shit, and he was just like, it's just annoying, it's just an annoying sound. I was like, yeah, fair. To someone who doesn't have any. To someone who doesn't have any connection with that kind of music, it probably just sounds like Crazy Frog.
Well, on my comments when I put up this thing, someone was like, "Are you sure this is James Blake?" And everyone's just like,
"Yeah."
He was a dubstep producer before a singer, and you've exposed yourself as a new fan. And then someone else like, people in the comments, not real James Blake here, they don't know he can do it all. And it's like the amount of people that came out there and were just like,
I got people, real defenders coming out the woodwork. It was great, but hey, it's I didn't mean it to cause division amongst the YouTube comments.
Of course you did. Big Hammer's not. It's hardly.
No, I did. Of
course you did. It's not like you didn't open the door ever so slightly and be like, "Is anybody out there?" You fucking kicked it off its hinges.
It was designed to be subversive. It was designed to make sure that when people wouldn't know what the fuck the album sounded like, and the next tune that I'm dropping, called Loading, is with my voice. Although when you first hear it, like a lot of people don't know it's me singing, but it is.
I love that though. You have mastered the ability to make yourself sound like many different people, and it's awesome. And I know how beautiful your voice is, and everybody does now how beautiful your voice is naturally, and when it's just without all effects and everything else like that. But when you are kind of processing your vocals in a way and trying to kind of design a collaborative experience, almost a feeling that you're not alone. Is it that deep? Is it like I'm looking to create something I'm looking to create a connection artistically, even though I'm only here on my own?
Yeah, it's definitely a way to have features without having to deal with people's egos.
Yeah.
But it's a way of separating me from the vocal I'm listening to so that I can then treat it like shit, basically. I can do whatever I want rather than it be this precious thing. It's like when I'm dealing with my own vocal, I always feel this kind of, it's like everything that surrounds it then has to kind of match the identity of me and the vocal. And sometimes that's prohibitive, but when I'm pitching my vocal around, it's just, you know, then the beat can be any way.
Yeah.
The chords can be any way. The vibe can be any way. It just totally changes it.
Given that you primarily work on your own, I know you have a couple of people you work with, and there's a co-producer and elements on this record and stuff, but do you still suffer from a crisis in confidence? Do you still suffer from moments when you've lost touch with your inner voice and you're just kind of like, well, I'm having a bit of an out-of-body experience within my own creative process here?
Yeah. Well, I get sick of my own voice for a start. I mean, that's the thing. I just seem to be on all my own songs. It gets quite boring.
For you?
For me, yeah. Because obviously there's so many more songs that aren't coming out. Most people are waiting, you know, if they're a fan of mine, they're waiting 2 years for me to bring out a new song. You know, for me, it's like there's just constant songs of mine floating around, and I tend to have to listen to them a lot because I'm producing them.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do get sick of your own voice. But at the same time, I think my confidence has grown recently. I think this album is actually like the most confident I've been putting an album out for quite a long time, because it's not trying to be good at anything. You know, it's like, well, I feel like with Friends That Break Your Heart, I was kind of trying to be good at songwriting and colouring anything a little bit the same. There was a lot of like pursuit of something great that I didn't have yet. And kind of almost a, you know, desire is suffering, you know, it's like that kind of thing of like, it's over there, and it's very difficult to, when you're thinking about something in those terms of acquiring a skill or trying to get to a certain imaginary spot.
Or you're immediately taking yourself out of the moment.
You are taking yourself out of the moment.
Which is incredibly anxious.
It is, and also you're also kind of admitting that what you are is not enough.
Good enough right now, yeah. But also, you're going to have to be the one who judges whether or not you made it.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny because those moments did end up. You know, I mean, like Friends That Break Heart was probably my best performing album that I've put out, even though it was 4th or 5th in my career. You know, assume form in that probably. But I think to some extent, I felt like I was trying to convince the art form in a way, and I with this, it's like every skill that was required to make this record was already there.
It's dawning on me now, it's not a solo record. It's an album you've made with all of the people who put these analog synths together, these modular synths together. They gave you these really cool ideas and the starts of something. A lot of the musicality that ultimately informs the songwriting is already flowing through these machines, these robots you talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I probably owe more to like IntelliGel, who make this Metropolis sequencer, than I do to Stevie Wonder on this album. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's whereas on other albums there were influences that just went all the way through, like him, like others. But this is the machines definitely spoke for me in a lot of this, and the kind of the way of creating. You know, there's a lot of talk about AI and stuff, but you know, generative music's been around a long time.
Yeah. I'm way less worried about the arts, or music, I should say, to be specific, than I am about other things.
No, I'm with you. Yeah.
Because to some degree, as you said, we've been relying upon these predestined kind of presets and everything else for a long time. I mean, it's one of the great creative gifts to the modern era is the analog and modular synth, because they ultimately gave you a template upon which to build, copyright free.
Yeah, and AI is going to open up a lot of possibilities for composition too. I think there's a lot of very exciting things going on with it. For example, there's this one guy who creates a synth called Synplant, which is this thing where you can put in any sample. Say it's a sound of me going da, and it will the synth.
That's the worst thing you've ever done with your voice in my presence, by the way.
Like that, like a warm up type thing, like that. I used to be able to do tunes with. I used to be able to do like the OK Corral.
Yeah.
Anyway, so something like that, like a sound, and then the synth would recreate that sound on a synth magically. It just does it. You don't have to do anything.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like, you could just imagine a thing and it just can be there. That's not, we don't have that. If you want to do that now, you've got to sit at a synth and like know how to use it, figure it. It's like there's going to be a lot of people who can make music who weren't previously able to in the ways that they want to. I think it's really interesting. But at the same time, obviously, as with every new technology, it creates lack too.
Again, I think with the music side of things, me, my principles are real simple. I go where the artist goes, and it's served me really well in my life. If I've ever tried to chase an audience or do something that I feel to go into a room where people are, I fail. I mean, I fall flat on my face before I even get to the door. But wherever the artist goes, that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And so my feeling is that you will inform us how you want to use it within an environment that is comfortable for you. And in your case, it may be using that synth. What's it called again?
Oh, a synth plant.
Yeah. For other people, it may be just like Grimes, or I think she's hinting at this, the idea of like, putting her name Warhol style on a piece of art that someone else has made. And she's like, it sounds like me and I stand by it and I didn't lift a finger on it, but cool, what's the difference between that and...
Yeah, she's democratized herself.
Right,
in
exactly.
a way, which is an interesting and new way of thinking about artistry.
I think we'd expect nothing less from someone like her to do that. She's very much at the forefront of thinking different. But I think if she's cool with that, I'm cool with that.
As long as she's making money out of it.
And
I'm
she's
fine
cool
with
with it. She stands by it. She sees an artistic merit to that experience.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. And so once I figured out, because everyone was asking me, I'm sure alongside you and anyone else who's kind of makes music their life outside of family and friends, like, what about the AI thing? Once I kind of figured out my position on it, at least in 2023, which was, if the artists are comfortable using it and use it in a way that makes them comfortable, I'm okay with it. If someone decides to come out there and sell me a Drake record that Drake isn't on and Drake doesn't like it, go fuck yourself.
Absolutely. And it's about making sure that the artists are enumerated. I mean, that's
Correct.
what I intend to...
It's not a game.
I just want to, take part in making sure that it doesn't end up creating music in people's likenesses that are sold without their... kind of having shares in it, essentially,
and also lacks the heart and the spirit and the...
Well, it will lack heart and spirit.
Yeah, but
anyway,
but in a lot of ways, we're already existing in a world where what's considered that the framework of that has been removed anyway. It's much deeper now in a different way. What I mean is like, I want to hear the artist stand by it. Like people say to me, "Are you worried about interviews happening in AI and cutting you out?" No, because they'll be too good. My interviews are at times really fucking shit and annoying, and that makes what makes the good parts good. It's got to have the both. It's got to have...
They haven't trained... I don't know. I don't think they've trained an AI to emulate a New Zealand accent.
We'll be the last on the list. We always are.
It's too nuanced.
It's so nuanced. Even the way I just said that. Nuanced. It's true. We're always the last. I mean, in this case, it might be good. Maybe we'll be the last bastion of humanity down under.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought? G'day, mate.
Yeah. AI will confuse you for Australians just as bad as any Uber driver.
That'd be more offensive to me than almost anything else.
Yeah.
Not because I don't like Australians, unless there's a game on, in which case I do not like Australians.
Right, of course.
But because our accents are to New Zealanders very different, and to Australians very different. But to all of you fine folk around the world, we're one and the same, and we're just not.
Do you hear the way I said, of course they are?
Yeah, it's very patronizing.
So I didn't mean it to sound patronizing. It's actually, they are very different. Not least because of the way you say your I's in words.
Thank you.
Which is very nuanced.
I forgot.
Very nuanced.
Well, I forgot how successful you are down under as well. I spent a lot of time down there.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
But we love you.
Thank you.
Is there anywhere in the world that you can't play in terms of like,
I'm not sure there's anyone
show up?
Anywhere I'm hated. I think
where your data shows that you people actively avoid your music. They leave the bar when it comes on.
There's places where there's no listeners.
Like where? Like, can you think of one? Where do you have zero engagement?
like
it's so funny, but the idea of you showing up and nobody
I don't know.
knowing.
I don't think anyone in Iceland has heard of me.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
I don't think they have.
That is not fair on Iceland.
I think it's
Someone in
just
Iceland-
Bjork that knows who I am.
Just the idea of you showing up to Iceland, no one gives a fuck.
No.
All right, well, we got work to do then.
There was a time when I went to Ireland. I mean, I love Ireland so much, but I went to a festival. It was on a particularly bad festival run where I was put on all the wrong lineups basically.
Right.
And I played this festival in Ireland, and
Who else was on?
Hosier was the headline act, and he was on at the same time as us.
Right.
So you can imagine Hosier in Ireland.
Yeah.
We went out, and
Very
I was
different.
like, I was backstage just going like, doing my general like, okay, cool, so I can, stretching, like just getting, because getting older and stuff. So getting ready for what was, like what I was hoping was going to be a great festival show. Anyway, the music starts playing, the intro walkout music. We're like, right, let's go. Going to kill this. Walk out. There's no second row. It's one row. And we're in, by the way, imagine John Peel tent size.
Yeah, it's like 7,000 capacity.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Out, looking out, and there's like there's some people picking up plastic cups.
Closing up for the night.
No, seriously, they're like, God, let's just use this James Blake set to make sure we can keep this tent clean. Because they can finally see all of the shit on the floor that everybody's left. So that was really genuinely a low point.
The last DJ set I ever did, I mean, I've done them since sporadically, but when I was touring,
Right.
before I came to Apple in LA, it was like, to me and my team working on DJing, this was
Yeah.
the end of the era,
Mm-hmm.
was at the Oxford Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled up, my tour manager went in, and he came out for 10 minutes later, he went, yeah, it's upstairs now. And I went up there, and it was the same. It was like about 12 people at the front. And at least you can disappear into your piano.
Right.
I'm up on decks trying to get 12 people to put their hands in the air.
That's the last DJ set you did?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, yeah, on that run, I did I did a festival on New Year's Eve in front of New Zealand, headlined after the fireworks display at midnight in front of 20,000 people, triumphant return to my home country. My agent was like, let's put a couple more on, yeah, just put a couple of months, put a couple more on. I was like, yeah, sure. And it all just fucking fell off a cliff.
I did a show recently with Don Toliver, and it was at Rolling Loud Festival. And
it was just after we spoke.
yeah.
I was
and-
wondering how that was going to go, because you were basically in your pajamas when I saw you, and you were like, yeah, I'm going to Rolling Loud later. I was like, well, you better fucking change.
Yeah, right. I did. But I might as well not have. I was stood backstage as he started his show, and we'd not rehearsed anything, so it was just a matter of just walking out and doing the thing, doing my verse. And anyway, I had the my in-ear monitors. I got some generic ones. Basically, they gave me some like headphone things, right? So immediately, the things like got caught on my clothes. It's tugging. So if I walk, my neck's being thrown back like that.
It's a shit show.
So I can barely really I can't really move around that much. So I'm feeling very stiff. So anyway, he starts our song together, and he doesn't introduce me. So I'm like, don't know when to come out. It's like one of the first times he's done this show, and it's going amazing, but he's in it. So he forgets to introduce me, and I'm like, okay, waiting for my moment. And I'm like, okay, I think this is where I come in. So I start walking out, and of course, no one knows I'm coming out.
Yeah.
So, and there's no indication that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I just walk out like this,
With
like
your neck slightly pulled by this thing.
No one knows I'm coming. Start walking down this runway super slowly towards Don. He's not looking at me. And my verse starts as I'm walking out, so I have to just while I'm walking, just sing the thing until I get to the end. I'm looking out. No one knows who I am or what the song is, why there's this guy singing on this song. I finally get to the end and my verse is finished. And then I'm like, okay, I got to go. So then I walk back and I'm like, oh, that wasn't great. And then Justin Bieber's on the next song, and he comes out and he's just like so natural, like fucking perfect consummate performer, like sort of like does the like, you know, the like, he's got the rapper moves, do you know what I mean? And he's just going out and killing it, and everyone's just like, woo! Like unbelievable reception. I checked the Twitter afterwards, and people were like, "Why is Mr. Beast on stage?"
Stop, man! You gotta stop.
Yeah. So,
but in a parallel universe.
Yeah, in a parallel universe, everyone knew it.
Bieber fucking flopped, didn't he?
Yeah, he flopped, and I was victorious.
I found listening to the album for the first time pretty emotional. You could tell. There's a couple of moments in there when it got the better of me in a good way. I was happy about that.
Well, you came around and I played it to you in more of a home setting.
Yeah,
and I was very, very glad to play it you there because it just felt, and it was. I mean, to be honest, it was still being made in a way, but I was finishing it up. But your reactions really gave me like a lot of confidence. And I think previous to playing it to you, I hadn't really considered how it could come across live and what it meant for the next stage of my career. And in a way, I'd sort of thought of it as in a way, almost like a detour to like, what about this? Like this left field. And it actually, talking to you about it gave me the confidence in the idea that it was actually the next James Blake album and that it's actually this is my sound and this is the next era, and to put more time and weight and kind of, investment behind it, because this is, in my opinion, like my most natural state. Like it's like I said, there's no skill. I didn't need to acquire any skills to make it. It just happened from what I was in that moment.
I think it's how we fell in love with you and what you do. And then I think what happened was then you showed this other side of you that had been sitting there. We've talked about this many times. For me, it was the BBC session where you did the Joni Mitchell cover, and overnight, everyone was like, what the fuck has he been sitting on? Like, shit.
Yeah.
And I feel like that then, to some degree, started to inform what was possible. But you're right, like, and it's lovely to acknowledge that, but for me, when I heard it, I was like, oh, this is what would have happened if that voice had not come out as quickly as it did.
Yeah, totally.
I think you would have just kept finding the emotion in the robots and like driving that shit.
Yeah, I think that's true. And to some extent, music is kind of like, you can never really separate like what you're doing from people's reactions to it, and then how that's informing the next things.
That's a beautifully made point, by the way. Anyone listening to that, that's a real, put that in the book, put that in the playbook. Anyone who says they can, you can't not be informed.
No, it's very difficult. And even if, it's like we can't really know our true nature in that way. And so when it comes to it, you may just be a victim of Pavlovian conditioning. It's like you might just be getting the pat on the head when you make a certain type of music, and then just going, where's the next hit of Sugar Water? So I think when it comes to,
I deserved it.
Thank you.
I haven't heard that. I just haven't heard it put that way before. It's so true. If you just distill that down, the idea that ultimately whatever you're doing in the present moment, as much as you want to try to separate yourself from how it's being perceived in order to find a clear state of being going forward, it can not somehow influence your next decision, which ultimately means you are attached to that experience, which again creates a Pavlovian.
And that's kind of how some kind of album, how some albums end up forming, because they weren't, you're not making it in a vacuum, so you have to. Whereas I feel like because I was making this album alongside other things, it kind of was made in a vacuum. And because no one really expected me to do anything,
everyone was looking at the puppet over here.
Yeah, there was a kind of and I guess the puppet was coming back with Scissor and the singles from that record, and the puppet was also Life Is Not the Same and songs like that, which I absolutely love, but they are me attempting songwriting in it. It's funny, I actually played Rick Rubin coming back, and he was like, this isn't a very good song. and I had to change it because it was at the time when I first played. It's like, it sounds good, but it's not a good song.
Rick has the most amazing ability, and this really is at his absolute core of his true being, to be able to tell you the truth and make you say thank you.
Yeah. 100%.
No matter how harsh it is.
Yeah.
I think there's something very genuine about the feedback. And also an absolute, and now we know this because he's been talking about it from within his book, this unwavering belief in his own taste.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I don't really need a producer a lot of the time. What I need is someone to go, that's good. Or it's not. Within your own catalogue and oeuvre, you know, it's like this is you at your strongest. Or this isn't you at your strongest, and then you've got to figure out why that is, and I think Rick's great at that.
And we haven't spoken about this because it's not really my lane, but I know her as well, and we've hung out before. I mean, how honest is Jamila about this stuff?
It's funny you say that because Jamila's a huge part of why I made this record, because she was always a huge fan of my early kind of electronic stuff, and you know, whenever I'd go out and play live, she'd love Stop What You're Doing and Voyeur in those moments. And she was like, you have to let people see that this is what you're also doing right now, and not just, you know, like you did it when you were 22. Like you've been doing it this whole time, and it's a whole side to you that people aren't seeing. Let them see it, you know. Because in my mind, I was like, right, where'd you go from Friends of Break Heart? You go further down that road, and also, otherwise people won't connect. And it's like, she was like, no, this is the most quintessentially you thing, and she would know, given how, you know, close we are and how she knows me. And it's like, I hadn't put my confidence behind myself in that way until she sort of just forced me to look at it, you know, as a at least. You know, she was just at least entertain it as like, these tracks you've made that you've been playing me, but you think they don't fit on a record. They do, you know, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be great live. And actually, when you came round, you said words to the similar effect, you know, but more heavily leaning into the live side, like what you were saying about the, you know, Tell Me, and how you were like, this is. And how Big Hammer might be the opening notes to a show, and it's like, it just, you know, it's like watching Carty at. Did you mention Carty at the Rolling Loud? Was
I didn't see the Rolling Loud. I went to the fucking Forum, my first show out of quarantine. It was like It's like I'm not sure I've actually ever recovered.
Him at Rolling Loud with that kind of backdrop and everything. It was really, and like the opening notes, and like how much people knew it was about to just be so anarchic, and like that.
Dude, it's just, all you got to do is hear that fucking Wake Up Filthy drop.
Yeah. Right.
Wake Up Filthy. And everyone just goes, fucking.
That's it.
Batshit.
That's it.
I mean, it blows my mind, actually, while we're just talking about opium for a second, how I'm used to like varying sounds can sort of register in people a reaction that is mad, but for it to be a producer drop, Wake Up Filthy, that is all you need to hear.
Yeah.
And it's like someone just triggers 20,000, 40,000, 60,000 people to just go absolutely crazy. Just that little weird Wake Up Filthy. That little Nokia text message thing distorted with the Wake Up Filthy. It's fucking genius.
It's great. It's like pulls you into the present. You're like right there. And actually that is kind of what we need the most in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, without getting too philosophical about that drop.
I could go on about 20 minutes about that drop. Also getting into that idea of you talked a little bit about the sugar water. I can imagine that you need someone in your life who isn't, no disrespect to anybody who's trying to do right by you and put you in the right rooms with the right people, but isn't saying, well, James, it's the voice that people want to collaborate with, and the production side of things too, you know? Yeah. But like, people want your tone on their songs. I mean, it's you're right up there with the sort of Samphers and the great vocalists who people are like, oh, please give me some some of your soul on my music. And so I can imagine that it might be quite hard to separate that side of what people are asking for in their world versus what you should be doing in your world, right?
Yeah, and actually...
It's quite a big bowl of sugar water, that one.
It is, and I think the way I feel about it is that without making music like this, I wouldn't be in that conversation, really. Even though this might not be the side...
That everyone knows.
That everyone... those kind of people you're talking about, like if you want to feature a vocal feature or whatever, it's like this might not be the side they're thinking of.
Yeah.
But it's also the reason I'm on their radar in the first place.
Yeah.
And the more I can be myself, the more right those collaborations will be.
Well, that's why this album's so important, right? Because it actually marries the two nicely for the first time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it does. Because, you know, if you go back and listen to some of my early electronic stuff, like it doesn't... there might be vocal samples, but a lot of it isn't me. Whereas this is dance music with my voice on it. And that's new for me.
That's what I love so much.
Before, there's obviously the Before EP, but the Before EP is also much more down-tempo generally than this. This is, Tell Me especially is heavy and fast. And
that bit where you go over and over and over. And it's just like, oh man, hearing you just willingly and openly press the button.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally.
It's like, so for anyone listening, the button is the moment in a song where the most obvious thing is the right thing to do.
Right.
The most right thing to do. If you're leaning instinctively into a place where you can imagine 60,000 people going over and over, don't shy away from it.
Yeah.
Have the confidence that it's the right thing to do.
And then give
it to them.
Give them the drop.
Give them the drop.
Yeah, it's wow. It goes on a long time now, doesn't it? The tail.
I stole it from the BBC.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's political.
Not really. It's a fucking sound effect. I've had it 9 years.
No, just symbolically. I mean, leave the BBC, go to Apple.
There was something.
Take their bomb sound effect.
Listen, mate. They wouldn't let me take the hottest record in the world, so I stole their fucking bomb. I mean, that's almost the truth.
Yeah.
They were like, "No, we're going to keep that." I was like, "Well, I'll keep this."
So another...
They definitely won, by the way.
Yeah, they won. Is there another? So another broadcaster can't say the hottest record in the world. Is that trademarked?
I could have, but it would have been a reach for me to go on almost at the same time as my friend Annie, who was doing that slot, and go, "No, I've got the hottest record."
I see. Of course, because there can only be one hottest record in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean.
And it's like best chicken, isn't it? It's like you can't...
Can you imagine if she'd have gone like, here's tonight's hottest record in the world, and then I came on and was like, well, actually, I have the hottest record. I mean, it would have been ludicrous.
Yeah.
Had a successful run. Should probably stay with the company.
Yeah.
But I jacked the bomb.
Yeah.
I'm not mad with what I walked away with.
No. I think you did well out of it.
I'm still using it.
Yeah. Is it exactly the same sound effect?
Exactly the same.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You should sell that. You could sell that as an NFT.
Are we still doing that?
I don't know. Who knows?
That's going to come back and bite me in the ass.
Yeah.
The NFT 2.0 revolution in 3 years' time.
That's not going to age well.
That's going to be an NFT. What you just said and what I just said will be an NFT. Cut that out. Put it in the file marked future NFTs. We'll make a fucking fortune.
I'm worried I might be an NFT.
You already are.
Fuck.
In a parallel universe, you're only an NFT.
An NFT can be a physical thing, so...
Imagine. Oh, that's interesting.
You can.
Yeah. I just know I'm right there with
Houses can be NFTs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I get it. It works. It works for me.
It's a confusing world of...
The last 10 to 15 minutes of this album are profoundly moving.
Thank you for asking a question there, because I didn't have any more banter about NFTs.
That's what I do.
And that's what I do. That was really smooth. Thank you.
That's what I do. Yeah, it's profoundly moving. And to me, it's where the concept of the album truly reveals itself. And I think that it actually starts pretty human. The album starts as like this human being finding yourself in this place where collaborations with artificial intelligence or pre-designed presets things can exist. I'm figuring this out. At the end, it's like a fully symbiotic relationship, which is in perfect harmony. Am I getting that right? That's how it feels to me.
Yeah. In other words, the biggest songs are at the front, at the top. Yeah.
I can't wait for the day that you're an NFT.
Yeah.
No, well, look, for a start, the last song on the album is effectively the title track. And so that's a reveal in itself.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, at the time when I heard it, those three pieces of music almost feel like one bit of music that's kind of flowing together as a three-part piece.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels to me like you've found yourself more immersed in their space than they are in yours. It feels like you are in control at the beginning and perhaps you don't have to control the end.
Yeah, that's an interesting read on it, actually. And I think the songs at the beginning, they are kind of, in a way, the sort of spiritual blueprint of the record, that the kind of the modular stuff and all that stuff has kind of followed as well. You know, like Playing Robots into Heaven, the actual track is kind of sounds like almost like a church organ or pipe organ, which is where the name came from. In fact, there's an Instagram post from 2 years ago where it's just this kind of modular synth, and it just says the organist that plays Robots into Heaven. That was the caption. And I said that, and then I just left it, and I just left it, you know, in Reels or whatever, you know, and then it didn't think about it again until I was compiling all this stuff. And then I went back to that name. And that was actually the track playing in that video is Playing Robots into Heaven, and that's what ended up being the last track. So the whole thing is a kind of an exercise in spirituality through machines, really, and giving it back to them in some way.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a surprise when you're a musician and you finally, especially when you're dealing in stuff like this, it can so easily end up in a bunch of unusable noise for me. But when I got the hang of it, I was able to create beautiful music with it, and that's when, you know, I'm kind of merely a curator in that space, in that moment. You know, it's like it's spitting stuff out, and I'm just going, "Oh, that's good. That's good." You know, it's not always predictable. It can't be you know, it's very hard to remake the same thing again. In fact, maybe impossible. So each moment that is on the record that is a modular jam or whatever is a snapshot in time, a jam that will never be made again. And that, I guess, that kind of special to this record. Whereas on a lot of other records, there are things I could replay, or there's things that could have been made in a different way. But this is,
To your point, it's everything that creates, is it by design, both perfect and imperfect, right? Because it's unpracticed, it's unrehearsed, there is no discipline to it, it just exists. Spontaneous display of melody or sound design, rhythm, something of that nature. And then to build something around it, to give it life and let it breathe and find emotion through the human experience. It's like one of the most like beautiful examples of that. You know, what Kraftwerk kind of ultimately began on a mass level, and others. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there's a long line of people who've made kind of human sounding music with drum machines and synths and all sorts that who've tweaked them to kind of be more. I mean, FX Twin's a good example. You know, Chemical Brothers. I mean, I asked them about it. I mean, they have hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and they just literally jam. They jam with drums and loops and figure things out. And I'm like, you know, I think that's the most fun part for them. I think the albums are just kind of a byproduct of the joy of doing it.
Exactly that, and that's really, you know, without, you know, I could talk about it all day on the technical side, but really, ultimately, it's having loads of fun with a bunch of gear and then just singing over it, though.
And that's still to come in part 2 of this conversation, Boffin's Corner, with myself and James Blake, where we will dive deeper and deeper, so deep, in fact, that you may never come out of the circuit board into the modular synth experience, how it's affected James Blake's sense of mental well-being and ultimate descent into insanity.
It's been, actually, ironically, it's been great for my mental health, because the way I interact with them, I don't use screens.
Oh, yeah. So it's all just sensory.
I think you lose musical intuition and sense when you stare at a screen too long. It's like you just can't hear what you're
Well, it's screaming at you to refine.
Yeah.
That's what I found. Whenever I'm making music, it's the hardest thing I can do is leave it unrefined, which is ultimately probably better. And I think you just get drawn into this idea. The amount of times I've caught myself like, it was so much better an hour and a half ago.
Every time I use a computer, that's how I feel. I got to a point where I was like, oh, this has happened enough times that I've lost. Like, I have to keep going back to early versions.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I doing it? Just don't use it.
Yeah.
And then maybe, and then when someone comes into the room, if I've been staring at a computer screen for 2 hours, 3 hours, someone comes into the room and I'm just like I don't have any like human left. So I just have to be like, talking to me is like, it's just very functional. Like I'm not really like truly connected anymore. And if that's how I am with someone when I've been staring at a computer screen, which I think it happens to everyone, by the way, which is why I think it explains so much of online discourse, and it explains so much of like why we're finding it hard to talk to each other in an empathetic way. It's like, that's what these screens are doing, whether they are designed to do that or not. They are doing that. So that's what sort of led me away from screens, and modular synths and kind of hardware stuff and like gear, and that's just, you could call it like a sort of like obsessive. It can develop into an obsessive hobby, but it's actually a very connective hobby. It's way closer to bonsai and fucking
totally.
It's way closer to that than it is close to programming. It's way closer to pottery than it is to, that kind of intense.
All right, give me your phone.
Process.
You fucking blew it. You overcooked it. Too critical.
Do you know what?
Give me your phone. Give me your phone.
But can I have it just a bit longer?
No, you're done. No. I'm going to remove the sim.
I
We don't even have sims anymore.
There's just a couple of games on this that I do like.
Fucking Tetris, I bet.
What do you do with it when I give it to you?
That's up to me. Listen, just give me the damn phone.
Okay.
Get rid of it.
All right.
Back to fucking Nokia for you, mate.
Well, there's obviously...
What? Don't say it. Don't you say it.
There's always...
Don't say it.
There's always... Android.
Get out! Get out! Get out! That's what you should have called the album. Music for androids.
Right, yeah. Is the bit over?
It's the thing about bits. You've always got to walk them back.
Yeah.
It's like when you
Really
pretend to walk out of a room and then you have to go back in. How long do you wait out there for?
I just don't come back.
Yeah, sometimes I don't come back. And then I'm like, that'll show you. Everyone just got on with the night and give a fuck.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, whatever. Then
It's like when you do
he thinks it's still a bit.
Yeah. Like in the back of the mind of somebody who's done an Irish exit, there's always the feeling of, I bet that's confused them.
Yeah.
I bet they're talking about it.
And no one cares. And I think therein lies a nice way for us to pause until our next conversation.
Cool.
No one cares.
Make a bum freeze. All in a summer, money, we a contest, and I know he can deliver. If you run him out,